Unity of the Huachucas presents Nyhus, LUT.
The honey in the pot, life is sweeter with friends.
And may we this day acknowledge and remember that really the only thing we have to know is that we are the love that we seek, we are the peace that we seek, and that in God, mind, and heart, we are safe, we are whole, and we are one people, united in God's presence. And so we take a moment to remember this as we enter the silence. We give thanks for this moment of quiet, and we honor and bless the blessing of friendship. And this morning, as we talk about being a good friend, may we have our legacy, that of unconditional love and oneness with all. We pray in the Spirit of the Christ. Amen. Well, as you can see by the title this morning, my intention was to talk about Winnie the Pooh, one of my favorite cartoons, and the characters in Winnie the Pooh. However, this past month I had the opportunity to speak to a women's group in Green Valley, and I chose to speak on our co-founder, Myrtle Fillmore. And when I was reminded of the topic this morning as being friendly, or being a good friend, I thought, wow, there was no better friend to the world than our co-founder, Myrtle. So I apologize ahead of time if this sounds like you got a quick history lesson this morning. But I think it's something that all of us it's important to be aware of as people of unity. And as we read our Bible verse, so I won't repeat that, but we're going to talk about friendship. So I'd like you to consider, just for a moment, that no matter how far and wide high-powered telescopes look into the universe, they see galaxy after galaxy after galaxy. And up until about 1920s, scientists thought the Milky Way, our galaxy, was the end of space. After the Milky Way, there was nothing. And now with the high-powered telescopes that are available, scientists tell us that it's very likely that space is infinite and time is infinite. Now in unity, we refer to that as God. We refer to it as the field of unlimited potential, and we refer to it as the field of cosmic divine intelligence. And I'm just going to give you a short example of that. Imagine two people emerging from the unlimited field appearing in body form in 2 separate places, 9 years apart, in the mid-1800s. That's when Charles and Myrtle Fillmore appeared on the Earth plane. They came to this tiny planet called Earth, and it was the perfect time in history with the rise of New Thought for those two people to meet. And I think it very likely, had that not happened at that time in history, we would not have unity today, and we probably wouldn't be sitting here. And that, my friends, I think is divine order. Mm-hmm. Well, Charles is remembered as the intellectual voice for unity. Myrtle is seen as the heart, the soul, and the spiritual spark. And could I tell you a bunch of anecdotes, you would have learned she really was a spiritual spark. As a child, she was born Mary Carolyn, but she didn't think Mary Carolyn Page actually fit her soul. So as a little girl, she changed her name to Myrtle. She was a very frail child, and she was diagnosed with respiratory problems at an early age, and they labeled that tuberculosis at the time. Her parents, Marcus and Lucy Page, really were protective parents, and so they encouraged her in quiet activities like reading and being out in nature. In fact, as a child, people saw her as a peculiar little girl that was a dreamer, and she would often talk about herself living in castles in the sky. She was thoughtful, imaginative, and she loved learning new things. In fact, her best friends were books and nature, and she would spend hours being out in nature, wandering around, talking to all the birds and the plants. At 22, she did something pretty remarkable in her world. She went to college. Her father had passed, her brother had passed, and it was her and her brother that were left in the household. And so she enrolled in the women's literary course in Oberlin, Ohio. And Oberlin, Ohio was a very liberal, progressive college, still is, I understand. And they had a program for women. They also had a program for men that were 4 years, but women were only eligible to take 1 year of college. Interestingly enough, it's another example of how divine order occurs here on our little planet of Earth. Charles Fillmore left school when he was 12 years old because his father had left them years before, and it was just him and his brother and his mother. So at 12, he went and got a job, but he knew in his heart he had to be educated, and he also loved learning. He had a good friend whose mother was tutoring her son in St. Cloud, Minnesota, where they lived. And the mother invited Charles to sit in on the tutoring. And her education was the very same school that Myrtle had been to in Oberlin, Ohio. So in a sense, Charles got the same college education as Myrtle did. After college, Myrtle traveled to Clinton, Missouri, where she taught in the public school. And she had been programmed from a very young age to believe that she had poor health, but she was very active in the community until she couldn't be. Her health began to decline, and doctors encouraged her to leave Missouri and move to a warmer, drier climate. She moved to Denison, Texas, where she put this on community by joining the Women's Literary Club. And I wish I could tell you some stories about that. That's cute. But anyway, There she met Charles Fillmore, and they became very good friends. Despite her ties to Texas and Charles, she was feeling better, stronger, and she longed to return back to Clinton, Missouri. So she went back there to teach in the public schools, where the parents loved her, the kids loved her, and she loved teaching. However, she and Charles continued to stay connected through letters. And in fact, he proposed marriage through correspondence. She said yes through a letter, and they were married in Clinton on March 29th, 1881. The first years of their marriage, Charles and Myrtle moved frequently. Charles was following the real estate market. So they traveled from Gunnison, Colorado, to Pueblo, Colorado, to Omaha, Nebraska, finally settling in Kansas City, Missouri. After settling there, Myrtle began not doing well again physically. Her respiratory problems worsened, and she started seeking help with doctors and healthcare providers in the area. Eventually, the doctors and the healthcare providers told her, Myrtle, I think perhaps there's nothing more to be done. Perhaps you need to think about your life is not going to be as long as other people's. So they considered returning to Colorado, but Charles had a dream telling him that Kansas City was their home and there was much to do there. So they stayed in Kansas City. Enter Dr. E.B. Weeks. He was from the Illinois Metaphysical College, and he came to Kansas City to present a series of classes. Myrtle and Charles attended these classes, and it was at one of these lectures that Myrtle reportedly heard, and you've probably heard these words, I am a child of God, therefore I do not inherit illness. Now, when we were in Unity Village for teachers training, there was some yakety yak that he never really said that when they read the thing about, the write-up of what he said, but that her soul heard it. She needed to hear those words. So she embraced them. She told her body that it wasn't ill and she wasn't going to die young. And she embraced that new truth of I am a child of God and therefore I do not inherit sickness. And she began talking to her body. With Charles' support, every night she would go into a quiet room, close the door, put an empty chair in front of her, place the Spirit of the Christ in that chair, and she would begin by reading the Gospels. She had two favorite verses that were her go-to verses that she would read. From John, truly, truly I say to you, who believe in me will also do the work I do, and greater works than these will you do. And from the Gospel of Mark, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you will receive it, and you will. And she continued to practice for days, for weeks, for months, and 2 years later she announced she was completely healed. During that time, Charles was exploring scriptures also, both the Bible as well as Buddhist, Hindu, and other faith traditions. And together they made the decision that they were going to start some type of spiritual work. Then Myrtle remembered a recurrent dream she had. She was in this beautiful place, high up on a hill, but she was looking over a dry riverbed. And in the dream she asked, where is that sound coming from? And where is that source of the river? And a rush of water came pouring over the cliff, filling the riverbed with flowing water, and she heard a voice say, "This is the source of life. It is free, flowing, everywhere present." So Myrtle began sharing her experience with her friends, her family, her neighbors, and she prayed with them. She invited them to pray with her. And this is the beginning of what we now call silent unity. It started as a small group praying every night at 10 o'clock. And then as rural people started participating, they moved the time to 9 o'clock at night. And people were encouraged to gather in their own home and to spend that time in affirmative prayer. Now they needed a teacher, both Charles and Myrtle, so they found Emma Curtis Hopkins filled that need. She was a spiritual teacher and a leader of New Thought and had a school in Chicago. Both Charles and Myrtle attended her classes in person as well as via correspondence, and they graduated as ordained New Thought ministers. Along with classes on practical Christianity, they were a publishing company, and we know where they're still publishing the Unity Magazine and Daily Word. They expanded their vision and bought a radio station so that they could spread truth farther. And by 1922, messages from Unity were broadcast from Kansas City worldwide. Myrtle, it is said, would get letters from people and tell her that the radio was kind of lousy airwaves. They weren't hearing it very clearly. So she would write back to them, "That's okay. We'd rather have you with us in spirit anyway. You receive us best then, and there's nothing to blur the love and power and light we share with you. I keep in touch with all my friends through the spiritual radio," and that's probably what we should be feeling. They also purchased the land at that time that would become Unity Village. In the summer of 1931, Myrtle Fillmore was 86 years old. And she had come to the realization that her work on this plane of existence was no longer her place. And she confided this with friends and with family, and from what I hear also that Charles was not happy with that thought at all. But she had been affirming that she would be led to a more quiet life so that she could be freed from earthly things and be able to spend all her time focusing on those things of eternal importance. So the Wednesday before her passing, Myrtle helped Charles lead the Wednesday night prayer service. She was at her desk Thursday morning writing letters and taking visitors. On Sundays, she spent time with her family and friends. And 2 days later, October 6, 1931, she quietly transitioned, leaving her body behind. So the question this morning, what does Myrtle's story have to do with our verse today? For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Well, Myrtle Fillmore's personality is best seen in her writing. And even as a little girl, she was raised in a very puritanical Methodist church, but she experienced God as a loving force present in all of creation. Everyone Myrtle met through letters, through airwaves, or in person, she saw as her friend. She embraced the entire global community as God's family, making other people her sisters and her brothers. And first and foremost, she embraced her oneness with God, as she understood God at that time and place. It is said, and you can experience if you have read any of her writing, she had this very eclectic and expansive view of God. This is one of the things she wrote. It's called My Faith. And I think as I read this, it's kind of like typical unity affirmation denials. I do not believe in evil. I believe in good. I do not believe in sin. I believe in truth. I do not believe in want. I believe in abundance. I do not believe in death. I believe in life. I do not believe in ignorance. I believe in intelligence. There is no discord in my being. My being is peace. My faith, understanding, and love are becoming one. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Secondly, she embraced her oneness with all of humankind. She sought to appreciate and enjoy every single day, to honor life, and most of all, to honor the equality of all people, of all walks of life. Her personal credo is this: to enjoy without possessing, to see without coveting, to have without holding. In short, to be myself without desiring, knowing that all of this is for me, for my pleasure and the satisfaction of my immortal soul. To say that I am a monarch of all that I survey, my right here is undisputable. To be generous-hearted, what I see others may see. What I enjoy, others may share on equal terms with me. She lived with unconditional love and faith in the power of God. She was loving, courageous, strong, confident, and she saw beauty wherever she went. Everyone she met, whether in person, whether it was over the radio waves or through correspondence, she saw as her friend. This is our legacy as people of unity. We too are called to be one with all of humankind, to be friends, to pray with each other, to rejoice with each other, and to share our sorrows. We are called to feed the hungry, to give water to the thirsty, and to welcome the stranger. I close with a thought to ponder this week. Unity is not an idea that we hold. Unity is the very truth that we live. And so it is.